Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Sales webinar. Thank you all for joining us. And if we have any men in our midst, stick around. We're happy to have you too. I want to thank our sponsor, UPS, for making this webinar possible. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but UPS was founded in 1907 and is the world's largest package delivery company. It employs 435,000 people worldwide, and there are 1,990 operating facilities. The UPS World Headquarters is located in Atlanta, Georgia, just a hop, skip, and a jump from the Sales Gravy office. I wanted to let you know that UPS has some great career opportunities, and I want to encourage anyone who's thinking about a career move to check out UPS.com. This is an extraordinary company, and I'm thrilled to be working with them. Grateful to Sheryl, who hopefully will be with us in a few moments, and UPS for being with us today. We also have Wendy Weiss, the queen of cold calling, our guest speaker, who's going to help us get those prospects to call us back. I would first like to introduce Wendy. As I said before, she's the queen of cold calling. She's an author, speaker, sales trainer, and sales coach. She's recognized as one of the leading authorities on lead generation, cold calling, and new business development. She's been featured in various business and sales publications, such as the New York Times, Business Week, and Entrepreneur Magazine. She's the author of Cold Calling for Women, Opening Doors and Closing Sales, and the Sales Winner's Handbook, Essential Scripts and Strategies to Skyrocket Sales Performance. She's also a former ballet dancer who believes that everything she knows in life she learned in ballet class. Welcome, Wendy.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I am delighted to be here with you, and thank you to Sales Gravy for inviting me to be here and UPS for sponsoring this, and thank you all for being here at this special training session. I am really glad to be here with you today, and we are talking about what I actually think is the #1 challenge when it comes to telephone prospecting these days, because it's simply harder and harder to get people on the telephone. So the #1 challenge, I believe, is simply getting prospects to return your phone calls. So that's what we're talking about today. So the first thing that I want to do, I want to hear from you. I am wondering, and type yes into the chat box if this applies to you. Do you wonder whether or not you should be leaving voicemail messages for your prospects? Type yes into the chat box if that's something that you wonder about. Okay, I'm seeing those yeses come in. Okay, how about this one? Do you wonder why no one ever calls you back? Type yes in the chat box if that applies to you. Okay, I'm seeing yes with exclamation marks. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Type yes into the chat box if you think you have better luck with email. And okay, I'm seeing more yeses coming in. I will tell you it's not about luck. It actually is about skill and strategy. So I'll be speaking more about that later on. And type yes into the chat box if you wonder how you can ever sell anything at all if you are never able to speak with your prospects directly and they won't return your phone calls. Type yes into the chat box if that applies to you. Okay. We are all on the same page here. I see the yeses pouring in. Okay, for those of you that do not know me, I will share with you, I'm known as the Queen of Cold Calling, but I was never actually supposed to be the Queen of Cold Calling. I was actually supposed to be a ballerina. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I moved to New York City, where I still live and work, and I moved here as a teenager to dance. And then eventually, like every artist in New York City, I needed a day job. That's a picture of me, by the way, when I was 5, before my very first recital. So I was here in New York City. I needed a day job, got tired of waiting on tables, and I got a job with a telemarketing company that did business-to-business appointment setting. And it turned out I was good at it. Who knew? Because ballet dancers don't talk. We dance, we don't talk. And I did that day job for a while, and then eventually I started my own business where I had clients that I would represent, and I did all the new business development for them. And it was actually one of those first clients that dubbed me the Queen of Cold Calling because I was able to find so many opportunities for him. And then from there, I segued into the business that I have today. The business that I have today is working with sales professionals, with business owners, with entrepreneurs, with people that need to develop new business. And I do have to tell you that I feel like I'm doing something that's pretty darn important. It is still difficult out there. And over the years, I've trained thousands of business owners, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals to use the phone to develop new business. I've used the phone to build my own business. I'm still on the phone every single day. I prospect every day. I've trained top producers. I've helped people become top producers. And I am really happy to be here with you today to share some of the ideas and the techniques that I've used to build my business and that my clients are using to build their businesses and their sales. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here, because I know you could all be doing something else. And so in the next hour that we have, I'm going to try and give you the very best information that I have and the very best help that I can give you in the amount of time that we have left, that we have together today. So this is what we're going to be talking about. First of all, how do you get rid of the frustration? Because you know what, I get it. It is really frustrating to keep calling people that you can't reach and you can't connect with them and they don't call you back. That is very frustrating. We'll also talk about how one word, what you say, matters. So we're going to be talking about that. I want to give you some tweaks that you can, as soon as we get off the session today, that you can start implementing to get prospects calling you back now. And also at the end of this session, I will be telling you about my cold calling survival guide and inviting those of you who want to go a little bit further to download, if you haven't already done it. It's a complimentary ebook. I'll tell you how you can access that. So my goal for today is to give you some tips and some tools that are going to help you immediately increase your results, because I want you to leave the session today with at least one new tool or one new idea that you can try out right away. Now, in terms of what we're going to be discussing, if you are brand new in sales, then probably everything I say today is going to be a revelation. If, however, you've been around for a while, I'm going to ask you to keep a beginner's mind, because being successful, whether it's in prospecting or in sales in general, it's not actually about what you know. It's about what you do. And sometimes it's the real simple little things that are going to make the most difference for you. And the best example that I know of this is in sports. If there's a team that has a losing season, at the end of the season, the owners fire the coach, they go out, they hire a new coach. What's the first thing the new coach does? The new coach goes back to the team and says, back to basics. And it works exactly the same way here. So if you get one tip or one idea from today's session that gets one prospect to return your call or respond to an email, or you get one appointment or one sale that you wouldn't have otherwise had, then our time together today will have been well spent. I will be taking questions at the end of the session. That's always my favorite part. So if you have questions as we're going along, please type them into the chat box. And at the end of today's session, it will be my great pleasure to answer your questions. So grab a pen and paper or your tablet or whatever it is you're using to take some notes. Here we go. Here we go. Here are some questions, because I get asked this all the time. You know, Wendy, should I leave a message or should I not leave a message if I can't reach the prospect? Or is it better to send an email? You know, what is the best thing to do? And again, sometimes people will say to me, I have better luck with email. It's really not about luck. It is about skill and strategy. And ideally, it is best to try and reach your prospect directly. So first of all, I want to give you 3 strategies that you can use to bypass voicemail altogether. And the first is pretty simple. Ask the gatekeeper. Ask that frontline person. If you get a gatekeeper and you ask for your prospect and that gatekeeper says your prospect's not available, be a detective, ask some questions. when is she done with that meeting? When is she returning to the office? You know, when does he come in? How late is he in this afternoon? Ask some questions, be a detective, and find out when you might be able to reach that prospect directly, because it's always better if you can get hold of somebody directly. You can also call your prospect outside of business hours. Call them before business hours, you know, 8, 8:30. Call them after business hours, 5, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Gatekeepers usually work 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5. Lots of times if you're calling business owners or high-level executives, they come in early, they stay late. And so it's easier sometimes if the gatekeeper's not there, they will actually be answering their own phones. Choice B is actually during lunch, that if you call someone during the lunchtime hours, if they don't have an outside meeting, they could very well be at their desk and the gatekeeper has gone. So that's a way that you can access your prospect directly. You can also, if you're calling a large company, call the wrong number. It won't be your prospect's number. That's okay. Just keep dialing different numbers within that big company until you reach a human being. Won't be the right human being? Doesn't matter. Ask that human being to help you out by transferring your call. The reason you might want to do this is if you have a prospect that does not pick up calls if they do not recognize the phone number or the name on caller ID, if you call someone else within the company and ask them to transfer the call, it will show up as an internal call, and it increases the likelihood that that prospect might pick up your call. So there are 3 strategies right there to try and access your prospects directly. But let's say you're not able to reach them directly. So the next question that I want to ask you, and I actually want to hear from you on this, what is the purpose? If you leave a voicemail or you send that email, what is your goal? Type into the chat box because I want to hear from you. You call the prospect, you leave them a voicemail, you send them an email. What is your goal? Okay, wow, these are pouring in. Let me see. And I'm reading from this teeny tiny little box. So let's see. Oh, wow, there's like a million. They're going so fast. To get a face-to-face meeting, to start a relationship. Not really. To get them to call you back, says Rianne. Well, bingo, Rianne. That is your goal. Matthew says to start a relationship. Identify the decision maker, says Sherry. Set up a time for a few minutes discovery call. I mean, these are all things that you do want to do. But the reality is that when you leave a voicemail for someone or you send them an email, your goal, really, your goal is to get them to respond. You want them to either pick up the phone and call you, or you want them to respond to your email. And that's it. And by the way, I do want to mention that a prospecting email is different from a marketing email. If you're in a company that has a marketing department, or if you're a solopreneur and you are the marketing department, you may be sending out email blasts. A marketing email is one email that goes out to many, many contacts. A prospecting email is a one-to-one communication. And so your goal with this one-to-one communication is to get that prospect to respond. It's not that they buy from you from your voicemail or that they're going to be willing to dump their current vendor and hire you. It's not that they go to your website or read your white paper. It really is that they respond to you so you can begin to have a conversation. So that begs the question then, if this is your goal to get someone to respond to you, what has to happen for that to be effective, for that to work? Well, the first thing that has to happen is they have to get your message. Now, if you're leaving somebody a voicemail message, assuming that their system is working and their voicemail box is not full, they'll probably get your message. But it's not really so straightforward with email. Just because you hit send on an email does not mean that it's going to arrive in your prospect's inbox. And so I want to give you a couple of things that you really do need to avoid like the plague. First of all, your company may have a wonderful new brochure and you want to send that along in a PDF. Do not do that. Do not send them your white papers, any interesting articles, nothing. Do not send them anything as an attachment. And the reason is that attachments get caught in spam filters. Your email doesn't arrive. The other reason is people that are savvy about email don't open emails with attachments from people that they don't know. The other thing you want to avoid, your company has probably given you a wonderful signature block with a really nice logo and all that stuff. Don't use it. You know why? It's because graphics, HTML and graphics can get caught in spam filters. And you're better off actually sending a text-only email as your initial prospecting email, because it lessens the chances of it getting caught in a spam filter. If it's caught in a spam filter, your prospect doesn't get it. So let's assume that your message has arrived. What has to happen next? Well, they've got to get their attention. Okay, let's see. There we go. It's got to get the attention. They've got to open your email and read it. They've got to listen to your voicemail. And that happens pretty quickly. With the voicemail, the first couple of seconds, if they don't hear anything interesting, they're probably deleting. Same thing with email. If they don't like the subject line, if it doesn't seem interesting, they're not opening your email. So it's got to get their attention. Once we have their attention, well, then they've got to either listen to your voicemail message or they've got to read your email. After that, they have to know how to contact you. I once was doing this webinar and somebody asked me the question. They said, you know, when I leave a voicemail, I never leave my phone number because I always send them an email with my contact information. And I was pretty horrified, actually, because imagine this scenario. You leave a voicemail for your prospect without your phone number, and they don't really have a way of easily calling you back. And then you send along your email, except it gets caught in a spam filter and they never get it. So you run the risk in that scenario of a potentially interested prospect not responding simply because they cannot. So you always want to clearly leave your contact information for a prospect. And by the way, if you are one of those people that mumbles your phone number at the very end of your message, your prospect is probably not going to call you back. So if all of these things have happened, Eureka, your prospect might respond to your email or respond to your voicemail. So what gets in the way? Here we go. This is the first problem that I see, and that is not having a system. What most people do is sometimes they leave a message, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they send an email, sometimes they don't. And they're basically winging it all the way to delete. Peter Drucker very famously said, "What's measured improves." And what that means is that if you have a system, if you are doing the same thing consistently over time and you are tracking it, you will actually know what works. And if you make changes to your voicemails or to your emails, then you would know if the changes you make get more people to call you back or fewer people to call you back. But that's not what most people do. What most people do is they're doing it on the fly. They're making it up as they go along. So this is what we do. This is what I do with the clients that I work with. We create a voicemail campaign. And for the clients that also have email addresses for their prospects, we do it in conjunction with email. So you actually might want to write this down, voicemail campaign plus email. Now, a voicemail campaign is a series of messages that you leave over time. And if you've got those email addresses, you're leaving voicemail messages and you are sending emails over time. You want to think of this as a drip campaign for voicemail. It's like any kind of marketing, actually. Ask anybody that does email marketing or direct mail. Somebody that's doing direct mail, they don't send just one postcard or one letter. Anybody that's doing direct mail successfully does not send just one postcard or one letter. They send multiple iterations of whatever it is they're doing. Same thing with email marketing, and the same thing here. There are a few reasons to do this. First of all, it builds rapport. Your prospect is hearing from you over time. It increases credibility, because what happens, let's say you contact someone for the very first time, they've never heard of you, they've never heard of your company, and you leave them that voicemail and you send them an email, maybe they're going to delete it. But over time, they're going to go, huh, I wonder if I know this person. This name seems really familiar. I've heard of this company. Now, the reason they've heard of the company is because you've been calling them and sending them emails. But that's how it works. It builds rapport, it increases credibility, and it increases response. That is marketing 101. We know that repetition increases response. And there have been all sorts of studies done that show that it takes sometimes between 8 to 12 contacts with a prospect, a voicemail, an email. 8 to 12 contacts to get someone to respond. So if you're stopping at 1 or 2, the chances of that prospect responding are slimmer and slimmer. Now, I had a client in California. They had no system, they had no process, they had nothing. Sometimes they'd leave messages, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they'd send emails, sometimes they wouldn't. We put together a voicemail campaign for them, and at first they were astounded. Now they've gotten used to it, but everybody that's using that system is getting their calls returned. Okay, so here is the second problem. Problem number 1 was not having a system. Problem number 2 is that your message, what you say in that voicemail or what you say in that email, doesn't make any impact. And again, what most people do is they're winging it. You can't wing this. You really cannot wing this. So write this down as well. No one cares what you do. Write that down. No one cares what you sell. So if you get on the phone and the message that you leave is, I sell insurance, or we sell IT solutions, or we sell real estate investments, or whatever it is you're selling, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And what you are doing when you leave a message about what you do or what you sell is you're actually making yourself into a commodity. If you're talking about what you do, you become a commodity, a thing. Like, and your prospects say, well, you know, I've got that thing. I don't need another thing because I've already got one. If you make yourself into a commodity, your prospect is going to delete your voicemail. They're going to delete your email. Imagine for a moment that everyone that you are contacting is listening to radio station WIIFM. That's radio station What's in It for Me. And it's really your job to tell them. And what's in it for me, from your prospect's point of view, is not about what you do. It's about how they might be better off after you finish doing whatever it is you do. Also, you cannot tell your prospect everything in one voicemail or everything in one email. You'll just confuse them. And so too much information will also cause the prospect to delete your voicemail or delete your email. Because remember your goal. Your goal is not to tell them everything. Your goal is to get them to respond. So you want to say enough in your voicemail and enough in your email that it gets their attention and their interest and that they respond to you so that you can have a conversation. Now, today we're talking about voicemail and email. Actually, everything that I'm saying right now also applies to when you get your prospect on the telephone. And I'm going to give you some more, I want to give you some examples of this as well. But let me give you my voicemail formula first. And the voicemail formula, this is how I'm going to recommend that you leave a message when you leave that message. Voicemail formula goes like this. The first thing that you want to do in a voicemail is say your name and your phone number twice, slowly, because you want your prospect to write it down. This in and of itself will increase your response rate. And what I generally recommend is that you say your name and your phone number at the beginning of the message, and then you say it again at the end. So you would say, hi there, whatever the prospect's name is. My name is, fill in your name, fill in your company name. My phone number is, and you say it really, really slowly so your prospect can write it down. And then at the end of your voicemail, you say, and again, this is your name, your company, and my phone number is, and you say it really slowly so your prospect, if they didn't write it down the first time, they can write it down now. And this in and of itself will increase the response rate. The next thing that you want to do is lead with how, whatever it is you do, how it helps your customers, the value, the benefits, the outcomes, the results. And I'm going to give you an example here. I was working with a client recently, and they produce events. And they work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, so their clients tend not to have really big budgets. And so I said to my client, well, tell me, why should a prospect be interested in learning about what you do? Why should a prospect return your phone call? Why should a prospect be interested in working with you? And she said to me, oh, well, you know, we have a very special process. And I said, you know what? Nobody cares. Why should they be interested in working with you? And she started to explain her process to me. She said, well, you know, first we meet with them, and then we assess their needs, and then we take them through our 7-step special process. And I interrupted her, and I said, nobody cares about that. That's all about what you do. The meeting, the assessment, the 7-step process, who cares? Nobody. So I said to her, what happens when you've finished all of that? You do an event for a client, what happens? What problem are you solving for them? And she said, well, you know, when we do an event for a client, instead of them doing it themselves, they actually usually end up making some money on the event. And I said, bingo. That's how you help your clients. So rather than getting on the phone and leaving a message about their special 7-step process, what I told my client to do was to say something like, we have a track record of helping nonprofit agencies generate revenue on their events, because that's how they help their clients. And then you can do exactly the same thing, and we have a track record of is a template that you can use, fill in how you help your clients or help your customers. Once you have done that, give an example. So in the example of my client that produces events, the example might be we were working with XYZ nonprofit organization, and they always used to lose money on their events, and we produced an event for them, and they actually generated however much revenue was generated. That's an example. After you have done that, you do need to ask the prospect to call you back. You do have to, and I'm going to talk more about this in just a moment, you do have to tell that prospect what it is you want them to do. So this is the voicemail formula, that you start out by leaving your phone number, you talk about the value, the outcomes, the results, how you help your customers or your clients, you give a brief example, you ask that prospect to call you back, and you leave them your phone number again so they can do so. If you are doing an email campaign in conjunction with this, your email could pretty much mirror what you have just said in this voicemail. I want to actually give you a couple of ideas about email, because one thing you don't have when you're leaving a voicemail, we don't have to worry about subject lines. But of course, in an email, you do have to worry about subject lines. And so in your subject line, asking a question about something that's relevant to your prospect, or something that you're talking about in your email, or even should we talk? Should we talk is a subject line that I use all the time that prospects respond to. You can also use your prospect's name in the subject line, Jack, comma, should we talk, question mark. You want to keep your subject line short, because your prospect could be reading this on their phone. And so you could have the world's most brilliant subject line, but if it's too long and they can't see it, not going to help you. So keep it under 40 characters. And here's the other thing about email. Your prospecting email needs to sound like you sat down and wrote it. Even if you're using a template, that's okay. I give templates to my clients all the time. Templates are fine, but it needs to sound like you wrote it, not like a marketing department or a generic email. It needs to sound like it came from you. And, you know, I have a client right now that's following the voicemail campaign process and the voicemail formula, and she used to leave messages and nobody ever called her back, never. And now she's having conversations with 25% of the prospects she calls because they're calling her back. And by the way, 25% is a very high conversion. Okay, so we have talked about the challenge of not having a system, and we've talked about the challenge of your message not making an impact. I want to talk about the third problem that I see, and that is not having a call to action. Now, what most people do is they kind of leave a message, they kind of go on, and they never actually tell the prospect what they want them to do. There are two types of calls to action. There is, and again, remember, your goal is to get somebody to respond. Even if they say go away, it is better to have a prospect say to you, go away, I don't want to talk to you, don't call me again, don't send me your emails, I don't want to talk to you, leave me alone. That is better than having to chase someone forever and never getting any response. Because if that happens, if a prospect says to you, go away, that frees you up to call somebody else that might be interested. So that is our goal. We want somebody to respond. And there are two types of calls to action. The first is a direct call to action, and that's pretty easy. If you're leaving a voicemail, you say, please call me. Again, this is your name, your company name, your phone number. In an email, you might say, please call me at your phone number, or respond to this email and let me know a good time to contact you, and I'll do that. That's a direct call to action. You are directly saying what it is that you want a prospect to do. Now, there's another kind of call to action, and I call this the indirect call to action. And the last message, I call it the move on message. Now, I talked about a voicemail campaign earlier. I don't think I described exactly how it works, so I want to do that now. Typically, we do a 4-call campaign. So if we're doing 4 calls and we have email addresses, we're touching the prospect 8 times. And so this is how it works. Week 1, call the prospect. If you don't get them directly, you leave voicemail number 1 and you send email number 1, which mirrors voicemail number 1. You wait about a week, call them again. If you get voicemail, you leave voicemail number 2, which is different from number 1. Still all about how you help your customers, but it's a different message. And then you send along email number 2, which mirrors voicemail number 2. You wait about a week, you call them again. If you get voicemail, you leave voicemail number 3, which is different from 1 and 2. Still talks about how you help your customers, but it's a different message. And you send along email number 3, which mirrors voicemail number 3. You wait about a week. If you've not heard back from that prospect, you call them again. This is voicemail number 4 and email number 4. If you're doing a 4-call sequence, it is the last message in the sequence. And so this move on message, which I'm about to give you in a moment. This is always the last, it's the very last message in the sequence. So however many voicemails you choose to leave, this is the last one. And it goes like this. You say your name, company name, phone number. I've tried to reach you a number of times to discuss, fill in the blank with whatever it is you want to talk about. I haven't heard back from you. I know you're really busy. So I'm assuming this isn't a good time for us to have this conversation. And I don't want to make a pest of myself, so I won't be calling you again for a while. I will check back in, and you name a time frame. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. Really depends how many leads you have. If you've been meaning to get back to me and haven't had the chance, I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss, fill in the blank with whatever it is you wanted to talk about. Again, this is your name, your company name, your phone number. And I'm going to say this again because I know somebody's going to ask me to do this. Hi there, whatever the prospect's name is. This is your name, your company name, your phone number. I've tried to reach you a number of times to discuss, fill in the blank. I haven't heard back from you. I know you're really busy, so I'm assuming this isn't a good time for us to have this conversation. And I don't want to make a pest of myself, so I won't be contacting you again for 3 months, 6 months, a year. If you've been meaning to get back to me and haven't had the chance, I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss, fill in the blank. Again, this is your name, your company name, your phone number. This is the last message in the sequence. It is also the most returned message in the sequence. Let's think about this for a minute. If you're doing a 4-call campaign and you're doing it with email, that means you're touching that prospect 8 times over 4 weeks. That's how it works. What most people do when they are prospecting, even if they're leaving messages, is maybe they leave 1 message. Maybe they send 1 email. Maybe they leave 2 messages or send 2 emails. They almost never leave 4 voicemails and 4 emails. And if you think about it, first of all, there are people that are in the market today for whatever it is you're selling. There are people out there that are in the market. And they will call you back. If you've left some really good messages, they will call you back. Because they are prospects, they believe that you're a salesperson, you will keep calling them. What most people do, however, is they call once or twice and they stop. So there is actually a disconnect between the way your prospect thinks about this. They're a salesperson, they will call me back, and what most salespeople actually do, which is call once or twice and then stop. So what you are doing when you use this move on strategy is you're saying to that prospect, I'm not going to contact you again. And the prospects that are interested, there's actually 2 groups. There's a percentage, there are people out there, they're in the market today. They will call you back. The other group is people, maybe they're not in the market today, but they know at some point in the future they will be. And because you've left some smart and articulate messages, they think, you know what? I should talk to this person because I know in the future I'm going to need this. And they will call you back as well. So the move on message is actually the most returned message in the sequence. Now, if you do not hear back from your prospect, you've gone through the complete voicemail campaign, you leave the move on message, you haven't heard from them, but you still think this is a good lead for you, you do not throw them out. What you do is you recycle. Take that lead and bump them ahead 3 months or 6 months or a year. And that is really simply contingent on the number of leads that you have. If you've got tons of leads, more than you know what to do with, bump them ahead a year. If you don't have that many leads, bump them ahead a few months and try them again. Okay. And actually, we do this with every client that works with my company. We set up this process or the clients, and every single one of them is getting prospects to return their phone calls. So to summarize what I've talked about today, I started out talking about the challenge of not having a system. You really can't wing it today. It's too hard. And so the concept is doing a voicemail campaign and doing it in conjunction with email if you've got email addresses, because we know that multiple touches increase response. That's marketing 101. It's a drip campaign for voicemail. And then what you say does matter. So use the voicemail formula. Make sure that your prospect has your contact information. That's number one. And then make sure that you focus that message on the outcomes, on how your customers are better off after they've interacted with you. That's what it's got to be about, not what you do. And then you do need a very clear call to action that will compel your prospects to call you back or respond to your email. And so there's the direct call to action, which is simply asking them to return your phone call or respond to the email. And then there is the indirect call to action, which is the move on message that works. I've seen it work over and over and over again, getting interested qualified prospects to return phone calls. So I'm going to open up for questions in just a bit. I've left a lot of time for questions because that's always my favorite part. If you've got a question about anything that I've been discussing or anything else about this topic, this is a very broad topic that we haven't been able, there's so many topics that we could go into underneath this topic. So please type your questions into the chat box, and it will be my pleasure to answer them. I'm going to take a moment to invite you all to download my Cold Calling Survival Guide. The subtitle is Start Setting Appointments in the Next 24 Hours. You can access that at coldcalling911.com. This is an ebook. It is a complimentary ebook that we put together just for you. It's a $27 value, and it will have you setting more appointments by tomorrow. So I'm going to turn back to Carrie to see if we have if there are any questions.
Okay, very good. Let's see. We do have Sheryl with us now. Do you want to go ahead and do the questions first, and then let's let Sheryl speak for a few minutes? How would you like to do that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, questions first?
Questions, sure.
Okay, very good. We have somebody here who's asking, when calling a recycled lead, what do you say?
Well, if you're calling a recycled lead, you haven't touched them in at least a few months. So they're not going to remember what you said last time. Use the same messaging.
Okay, great. Another one that I saw a little bit earlier on is, are there any terms that you should avoid in the subject line to avoid spam filter?
Terms in the subject line. Certainly you don't want to have all capital letters, words like free, sale, those kind of words. There's something called Spam Assassin that you can use to check your emails. But don't worry about that as much as making your email short, to the point, and just focus on how you help your customers. That's really the most important thing. Just focus on how you help your customers and ask your prospect to respond to you, because that's it. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. All right. I have one here that says, who's asking, if your company isn't well known, because it's kind of a young company, then wouldn't the response to the subject line, do you want to talk, wouldn't it be no? How do you get around that?
Well, it's not a matter of getting around it, it's a matter of testing it and seeing what your response is. If a prospect looks at the subject line and says, and the subject line is "Should we talk?" ? They don't know until they open your email and read it. They don't know what you have to say. They don't even know if they know you particularly. So you've got to say something. The subject line is to get them to open it. So "Should we talk?" is, I'm blanking on the right word, but it's simply something to get their attention, to get them to open your email. Oh, should I talk to this person? I don't know. But then you have to say something that's going to make them say, well, yeah, I should talk to you.
Okay, very good, yes. All right. Another person, Lisa, is asking, can we use a written testimonial in an email as an example of how we help clients, or do we use examples in voicemails only?
Use examples in your email, and generally what we do is the email mirrors the voicemail. So if your voicemail is, "We're the best thing since sliced bread," for example, this is how one of our customers benefited from using our service, then the email would be some version of "We're the best thing since sliced bread. This is how one of our customers benefit." So if you've got a testimonial that you can use, you could leave it in your voicemail. It's got to be short. You might need to edit it down, and then you can use it in your email as well.
Okay, good. Next one is, what's the best pitch to obtain the prospect's direct email ID from the gatekeeper? What's the best pitch to obtain the prospect's direct email ID from the gatekeeper?
Okay, well, I don't know that this is a pitch. It's a question. You can say to the gate, if you ask for your prospect and the gatekeeper says your prospect is not available, no problem, I'll just send her an email. What's her email address?
Okay.
That's what I would do.
Okay. And does connecting and networking with clients on LinkedIn help? And if so, what's the best approach?
Certainly connecting with clients and prospects on LinkedIn is very, very valuable. If you have a target at a company and you're interested in introducing yourself to that target, and you're connected to somebody on LinkedIn that can facilitate an introduction, by all means, you want to use that and ask that person that you are connected with to facilitate that introduction.
Okay, great. The next one is, the first line of the email can be seen before you open an email. What do you suggest that we enter on that line? What do you suggest for the first line?
I suggest that you write something about how you help your customers. The template that we often use is, we have a track record of, and you fill in how you helped your customers. I'll go back to the example that I gave earlier with my client who produces events. She wanted to say we have a 7-step process, and we meet with the client and we assess their needs, and step number 1 is this and step number 2 is that. Prospects are not going to read that. They're going to delete the email. So instead, she put in, we have a track record of helping our nonprofit clients generate revenue from their events. For example, we just worked with whatever the name of the nonprofit was. They used to lose money all the time, and at their last event, which we produced, they generated X amount of dollars. I'd welcome the opportunity to have a conversation with you about your events. Please call me at my phone number or respond to this email and let me know a good time to contact you, and I will do so. Short, sweet, to the point.
Okay, excellent. All right, and then let's see. What should I say if a prospect says, I'm not interested?
I get that question a lot. There are actually only 2 reasons that a prospect says, I'm not interested. The first reason is you're not talking to the right person. You need to have a very targeted list. You need to, there's a certain amount of upfront work you need to do to identify the right person. And if you are talking to the wrong person, they might say, I'm not interested. What they actually mean is, I don't handle that. I'm not the decision maker. There's like a whole bunch of things that might mean. The other thing, if you are 100% sure you have targeted correctly and you're talking, and everybody that you talk to says, I'm not interested, that means you're not saying anything interesting. And so what you have to do is go back to the beginning and ask yourself the question, how are my customers better off after they buy my product, or how are they better off after they use my service? What are the results we get? What are the outcomes? How do we make our customers' lives, business lives, better? Their employees' lives better? Do we save them money? Do we make them money? Do we help them be less stressed? Do we take some burden off of their shoulders? What is it we do that makes their lives better? That's what you have to talk about.
Okay, great. I have another good one. Do you have any tips on addressing warm leads versus cold?
Okay, that's a great question, because that's another myth. The myth of the warm lead. Type yes into the chat box if you've ever had a warm lead that wouldn't talk to you. And I'm willing to bet that we're going to see the flood of yeses coming in. Whether or not, yeah, oh, there they are, yeah. Just because, see, prospects don't think of themselves as warm. They think of themselves, they think, is this person saying anything that I find to be interesting? That's what they think. You call them up, you say something, they're not interested, they'll say I'm not interested and hang up on you. So even though you might have a warm lead, you still have to think about what you're going to say and approach them in such a manner that they understand how you might be able to help them. What's the problem that they have that you might be able to solve?
Excellent. Okay, good. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. What is the response to send me some information? I hear that a lot.
Okay. Well, it does depend, and I see that's Robin asking that question. It does depend, Robin, on what your goal is. If you are looking to looking to set an appointment, which is often the first step for most people, send me information is something that people say when they actually mean something else. They hardly ever mean, and I'm going to sit down and read it. Generally what they mean is either I'm really busy, or they might mean you haven't convinced me. I haven't heard anything that makes me want to make an appointment with you. But let's assume it means I'm too busy. What you want to say is something that will get them to come out with their real objection, so you can address their real objection. So what I usually recommend clients say is, first, you agree with them. I could certainly send you some information. It's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to look through what I'm going to send, and I only need 10 minutes of your time, any time that works for you. Can we carve out some time one day next week, or is the week after better? So you're sort of sidestepping that issue, and often what will happen is they'll come out with a real objection. They'll say, I'm busy, or I have a vendor. They'll give you some other reason. You might need to address that again. But send me information as a smokescreen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, just in the regarding time, if you're okay with it, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sheryl, so she has a few minutes to speak.
I would like to, before we do that, give me one quick minute, because I see Rianne asking what's the best way to get reps bought into actually using a cold calling strategy versus winging it. And okay. I'm going to say training, Rianne, training. And you can give us a buzz at 866-220-4242, or go to my website, coldcallingresults.com or coldcalling911.com. You can contact us from there, and I'd be delighted to talk to you.
Great. Thank you. That was wonderful. I appreciate it. And so I'm going to introduce Sheryl, and then if anyone has any more questions, if we have some time, we can finish up with some of those. So Sheryl, let's see here, as I mentioned, is with us from UPS. She is the Director of Sales at the UPS headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. After graduating from Texas A&M University, she joined the banking and finance industry. Looking for a change, in 2008, she joined UPS in an entry-level sales position. She was promoted several times and rose into a management position in 2012. In 2014, Sheryl relocated to Atlanta and was promoted and given the opportunity to lead a team of over 80 sales professionals and managers as the Director of Sales. She's earned several awards in her career, including the Silver World of Champions Award 2 years in a row. Welcome, Sheryl. Tell us a little bit about your journey with UPS and how you got there.
Hey, Carrie, thank you so much to the Sales Gravy team and Wendy for your excellent webinar on prospecting and how to get people to call you back, and certainly appreciate everyone's time today. I'd love to share a little bit about my career with UPS. Carrie kind of told you I started out in the finance industry, and really the biggest change for me was deciding, is this the industry I want to be in? And when I decided to move companies in 2008, I really started doing my research on what company was going to be a good fit for me. I enjoyed the finance industry, but had a lot of ambition and really wanted to start progressing in my career and really move up as quickly as I could. And I really wasn't getting that opportunity in the industry I was in. I actually had a friend that was working at UPS as a salesperson. He spoke very highly of UPS, of not only the opportunity that they have, but the training and development that they offer, and also the culture itself, and really how everyone really worked together as a family, and how there was such camaraderie and leadership within the organization. And that's truly what I was looking for. So I took a little bit of a risk in 2008 and decided to go ahead and take an entry-level position there at UPS. And it has been the best decision I have ever made. UPS is not only a transportation company, it's really more of a technology and business solutions company. And that's really how we look at ourselves, and when we talk to our clients and things, that's really what it's about, really how do we progress their business forward. And for employees themselves, it's really amazing to be with a company where you can have several careers within the same company. So you can have a finance career, you can have a sales career, you can have an industrial engineering career. There's just so much opportunity in so many different fields within the organization. It's truly unique in that experience. So for myself in my career, a big portion of why I've been so successful really is because of the development and the training that UPS has offered me throughout my history with them. Ever since I was a entry-level salesperson to now, they've really embraced myself and my team and really given us the training and support we need in order to be successful. It's also about getting involved. UPS is very involved in the community. It's very involved with the employees, so there's a lot of opportunity to get involved in things outside your normal job title. So for instance, we have many business resource groups such as Women's Leadership Development. We have one for millennials. We also have different committees like the United Way Committee and things of that nature where you're able to get involved and really develop and hone in a separate skill set from just your job. And I would say that's been an attribute that has allowed me to be so successful as well, is getting involved in things outside your normal work tasks in order to really develop those skill sets as well that you can utilize to really justify taking on another position. But truly the support and development I've gotten from UPS has really been the key to my success.
Excellent. I think I had no idea before working with you all that that UPS had so much, was involved with technology and all of that. So it is really, there's so much more to UPS. You're right. I mean, of course, and I really encourage everyone to go and take a look at the website, because there's so much there. And tell us a little bit. I'm interested in the UPS Women's Leadership Development Program that you're involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I've actually been involved with the Women's Leadership Development, BRG, for quite some time. Really, it started out where I was an attendee and a participant, where I would just attend the events and participate in them. And then also, then I joined the committee because I wanted to get a little more involved and start sharing some ideas. And now I'm a sponsor of the Women's Leadership Development, so really kind of focused in on the vision and long-term goals and really how we how we structure the program to reach those goals. The overall vision is to really embrace our women population, our women leaders, and how do we truly hone in on what the specific obstacles are, how do we overcome them, what sort of development should we be focusing on, not only to develop our talent, but retain it. Some of the things we've done are mentor programs, making sure we're pairing up women not only to develop their mentoring skills and their leadership skills. We've done book clubs where we read different books that are relatable to some of women's issues and things that we find important. And really just being a support network for each other so that way we're all successful in the end, and we really hang on to the talent that we need in order to lead the organization in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, regarding cold calling, one of our people asks if you have any stories about cold calling you'd like to share, since that's our topic today.
Yeah, I actually do have some stories about cold calling, and I talk to my sales force about it quite often when they say, you know, my pipeline's kind of dry. I don't really have any more opportunity in my territory. And then we start talking about cold calling. The biggest thing for myself and my sales team is really putting aside that awkwardness, that uncomfortableness that comes along with cold calling. I know for myself, whether it was over the phone or over an email, or, you know, just knocking on door to door, which we used to have to do, walk into the business, knock on the door, and try to get the right contact, is really being confident in the delivery of your message. Wendy alluded to it earlier. It's what's in it for me. So making sure it's not centric to what you're trying to sell them, but really why they should use you or purchase something from you. So making sure you kind of had your elevator speech, if you will, prepared, so that way when you did run into the right contact, you have something of value that's really going to provoke the value from the customer standpoint and really get them involved and interested. It does take a certain amount of confidence to deliver that message to where people receive it. So making sure that the uncomfortableness doesn't come across to the customer, because if you don't believe it, they won't either.
Is it a good idea, Wendy, to ask if your prospect has a moment to talk with you?
You know, I'm not a big fan of asking if you have a moment to talk, or how are you today, or any of that kind of stuff. You're really better off simply saying what you have to say, because during the time that you say, do you have a moment to talk, begs the answer, no, I'm busy. So you're very much running the risk of shooting yourself in the foot before you have a chance to say anything at all. So as Sheryl was just saying, be prepared with your elevator speech, your very brief introduction, say what you have to say, and then if the prospect can't talk to you then, you can at least arrange a phone date to call them back. Whereas if you say, may I have a moment of your time, and they say, no, I'm busy, you're stuck trying to hunt them down again.
Right. Okay. Great. To thank Wendy Weiss for being our presenter today, and a special thank you to the UPS for sponsoring this webinar. I want to thank our wonderful Sales Gravy audience for joining us and being so engaged with us. We always love that. Our Sales Gravy audience is always great about that. And thank you for taking the time to listen today. I know everybody's busy. So take care, and look for notifications for our next Women in Sales webinar next month. Happy selling, everyone. Have a great day.